Hey everybody, it's Christina, and in this video I want to actually take you through my process to give really good love and relationship readings. And it's been a couple years since I originally hosted this workshop, so as professionals we kind of improve our process, tweak our process, and I have some really exciting new techniques to add depth and layers to your love and relationship readings, and I would really love to share that with you. And so what I'm going to be doing here is we're going to be doing a relationship reading, a celebrity relationship reading. This is going to be on Beyonce and Jay-Z. Pretty much everybody knows who they are, so I figured I would choose a couple that was relatable. Also, a couple years back, there was a lot of drama going on. There was speculation that Jay-Z had cheated on Beyonce, but they are otherwise a really private couple. So I figured that this would actually be a really good couple to focus on, because while we do have some detail out there about what, their struggles had been in their relationship, they don't have too much to where we are getting confirmation bias through the cards, right? So let's go ahead and start. So if you look on the screen right down here, I'll explain this. So on the left-hand side, we have five cards total for Beyonce. And then on the right-hand side, we have 5 cards for Jay-Z. And then in the middle, we have this kind of diagonal line. And those are going to be 3 cards to kind of talk about the relationship between them, okay? So you may notice that the piles for the querent and the piles for the significant other, I used to line them up in a row of 5. I've recently changed how I've done this, and the reason why I've changed it is because I've been inspired by the Celtic cross. I've been kind of going back to basics a little bit lately, and one of the things that I really like to do when I'm doing that is I pull out the Celtic cross, because it's just kind of like one of those traditional readings, those traditional spreads that you can use. And it pulls a lot of information out. And I know some people, you either love it or you hate it. So hopefully maybe today I can kind of convince you to kind of maybe look into it if it's something that you don't really like, or if you do like doing the Celtic cross, maybe this will give you some more insight about how you can transfer that knowledge from the Celtic cross over to any type of spread when you're asking any type of question, to be honest. So there are some positions that we need to talk about, okay? So let's focus on the Beyonce spread for right now, which has the King of Swords at the top, the Four Swords the Four of Cups in the center, the Page of Cups at the bottom, the Hermit on the left, and the Eight of Wands on the right. So the card in the center is basically going to represent the person's energy at the time, either right now or at the time at which we're asking the question. So it depends on the context of the question. So if the querent is asking, how do they feel about me right now, the center card is going to give the main energy for that. If you're asking, why did this happen, you're trying to get insight about something that's already occurred. So the center card is kind of like a snapshot of that person's energy at that time. But it kind of frames the overall information that we're going to get from this entire spread. And it's really a central focus point. Now, the card on the left talks about the past. It talks about what mindset or what actions have been going on to kind of lead up to the present moment, whenever the present moment is, whenever you're doing this for your client, whether it's how do they, right now, or why did this happen in the past, that sort of thing. The card on the right talks about the future. It talks about future goals, talks about where things are headed, where the mental, emotional, spiritual landscape of that person's thoughts, feelings, etc. is kind of leaning towards. The card on the top is going to represent that person's conscious thinking pattern. So it represents what that person is aware of, certain thoughts, feelings, emotions that they are aware of, And then the bottom card is going to represent subconscious thoughts. So subconscious thoughts could be basically like the secret desire. Like, even though they're telling themselves one thing, this is how they actually feel. Or, if we see like a sabotaging pattern or something like that, it could represent some type of sabotaging pattern or sabotaging thought that the person is, kind of wrapped up and entangled into, that is more of the driving force that while they think they're having these conscious thoughts and this is what they're telling themselves, their actions are speaking in perhaps a different way, maybe not. We're going to find out. So that kind of goes over that, and that's the same on both sides. And then the spread down the center is the 3 cards in the diagonal, and that's just your typical past, present, future, like where things have been in the past, where they are right now in the current, and then current energy, and then in the future it will talk about like where things are going. And typically when we're doing this sort of reading, that very last card that you see with strength there is kind of like, is there going to be a resolution or an outcome? Like, what is the outcome of all of this? Okay, so I think that's enough about that. I think you guys will get the picture as we go forward and go through this process. So step 1 is getting direct questions before you begin. Okay, so the direct question basically is, what was going on with Jay-Z and Beyonce when all of that drama erupted? Did he actually cheat on her? Was there, infidelity, that sort of thing? Okay. And was there an emotional attachment, or was it just a physical relationship? We're going to try to get some distinction between that as well. Now, step 2 is you want to shuffle and lay the cards face down. Okay, so we're going to skip that step. Step 3 is that we're going to look for the majors and the minors. Okay, so let's go ahead and start here. Now, if we look at Beyonce's side, we do have a major. We have the Hermit with his little lantern. And that's it. That's the only major that she has. Now, when we look over at Jay-Z's pile, he doesn't have any majors at all. Okay? So that's the first thing that I want to take a note of, is who has majors, who doesn't have majors. If they both have majors, is there a balance there, or is there more majors on one side than the other? Or if there's no majors, then okay, maybe what's going on there. So it looks like Beyonce is the one with the major. It looks like Jay-Z does not have a major. So what I could infer from that is that I kind of look at the major arcana as being more open to like spiritual lessons, being more open to like the bigger picture, thinking about their role, their place, and how this is all going to work out. So it looks like Jay-Z, since he has all minors, it looks like he's not really thinking on a spiritual level. It looks like he's not really looking for the lesson here. He's more entangled up in the mundane, practical aspect of the relationship at the time that all of this drama was going down. Now, Beyonce does have a major arcana, and it shows in the past kind of leading up to the present on the left-hand side. And so what that kind of tells me is that she is looking for the lesson. It tells me that she is thinking about things not just on a physical level or an emotional level, but she's thinking about things on a spiritual level, on a higher level. And with the Hermit card there, it tells me that she is kind of withdrawing into herself to find the answers for herself. She's trusting all of the life experiences that she's been through so far to, about like relationships, or just about people respecting you, or boundary issues and things like that. So with the Hermit card there, it does tell me that likely Beyonce has kind of withdrawn into herself to kind of seek her own spiritual answers. But with the Hermit card, even though it's a secluded card, we think of the Hermit goes into his cave. But even with the Hermit being such a secluded card, he is standing on top of the mountain with a lantern, and he is, he's not like actively trying to get people to come to him, but he's just saying like, hey, I'm here. This is where I am. If you want to come to my level, you can find me here. So it has that energy of spiritually wise, like she's staying open and she's looking to see if maybe Jay-Z wants to join her in those spiritual thoughts and that spiritual union, but she's not going to chase it and she's not going to pursue it. Okay. So that's step 3. We want to look at the major or minor, and we want to write down any initial kind of thoughts we have about that. All right, so we've already covered there is an obvious difference. Beyonce has one, Jay-Z does not. Step 4, we're going to read the card positions for the main person and the significant other, if applicable. Okay, so basically, if we want to just boil this down, I always look at the querent first and then the significant other. So the card in the center for Beyonce is the 4 of Cups. So her overall general energy right now is that of apathy, of feeling indifferent, emotional indifference. And so looks like she's got a lot in front of her that she's dealing with. She's juggling many different relationships and commitments right now. That's what those 3 cups in front of her kind of represent. And, she's trying to make this relationship with Jay-Z work, but at this point, whatever he is offering her or trying to provide for her, she's really not that impressed, right? So there just doesn't seem to be this energy that she's actually, like, impressed or that she feels that it's perhaps even good enough for her. So if we look over on Jay-Z's side, he's got the 6 of Swords. And so the 6 of Swords is the lady in the boat with the child and the man. And then on one side, you have very turbulent water. On the other side, the water is clear. So there's like this energy of moving away from troubles, moving away from obstacles, things that are getting in your way, seeking safe harbor. And so at this point, it looks like Jay-Z was actually considering leaving the relationship altogether and moving on from that, because obviously there's a lot of conflict there and he feels like maybe he's kind of, mentally kind of checked out from the relationship. So Beyonce feels like whatever he's giving her is not good enough, and Jay-Z feels like maybe he should probably just move on from this relationship. He's not feeling like he's very emotionally invested right now because he feels like the conflict is trumping whatever benefit that they could get out of this relationship. Now, if we look at the past position, we've already talked about the Hermit, so I'm not going to go into Beyonce's Hermit. But let's look at Jay-Z's 7 of Cups, okay? So this is kind of like the past thoughts, like what kind of led up to him wanting to leave, right? Because the 6 of Swords. So we look at the 7 of Cups, and the 7 of Cups has a guy, and it has all these clouds in front of him, and it has all of these chalices in front of him, or cups. And in each of the cup is a different life path, a different pursuit in life, if you will. You have the wreath, which is like victory, and then you have riches, and you have a castle, which could be like your domain, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things kind of competing for the person in the card's attention right now. And so what I get from that is like in the past, leading up to the point where he wants to move away from the conflict, he just doesn't really know what he wants, to be honest with you. It seems like he is someone who has a lot of opportunity in front of him, has a lot of shiny things in front of him that he can reach out for, and it doesn't seem like he really knows himself enough to know what he really wants. And so what this does is it's sending mixed signals to Beyonce, because she's like, well, if you don't know what you want, you're not going to make me a priority, then that's just not going to be good enough. So that's how I would read the past cards in this situation, in Jay-Z's situation. Now let's look at the future, kind of like where things are kind of going. Like, what do they think that their next step is, right? And so we look at Beyonce and we look at the card in the future position on the right-hand side, and that is the 8 of Wands. And so in the 8 of Wands, there's 8 wands flying through the air, bustling through, right? And so it has this energy of being very busy, holding up many, many priorities and commitments all at once, and feeling almost maybe perhaps kind of strained, and like there's not enough energy to kind of support that, and feeling even a little bit perhaps overwhelmed. It's not quite at the point of like the 9 and the 10 of Wands where you're at that like you have that feeling where you're working too hard at something, but there's a little bit of chaos going on here, and it just seems like Beyonce was trying to juggle a lot of different things at once. She was giving a lot of different things her attention, trying to give it her best, trying to juggle a whole bunch of things. And we don't have the information quite yet of how that kind of worked out. We'll look at the center spread for that. But overall, it just looks like Beyonce has a lot of commitments going on. She's very busy. She's stretched thin. It's not yet at a point where it's too much, but it's coming up on the point where it's beginning to be cumbersome. So we'll look at the future card for Jay-Z, and so we kind of see where his mind is kind of going and why he kind of wants to move away from this relationship. So we have the Seven of Pentacles, right? And the Seven of Pentacles kind of talks about, putting effort in and not quite getting the results that you were looking for, and or something taking a long time to manifest, right? So we see this guy and he's got this bush of pentacles and he's got this it looks like a gardening tool he's holding onto, and he's kind of looking down at it, and he's kind of looking at it longingly and disappointingly, like, okay, or is this all I'm gonna get, or how much longer is this going to take, right? So at this point, Jay-Z kind of feels like he's invested a lot of energy, time, and perhaps even money into this relationship, and he's just not getting out of it what he feels that he needs from it, okay? We'll also talk about, the suits, and we'll talk about the numbers too to kind of give nuance. We're going to kind of circle back to that. But for right now, we're just going to talk about the cards themselves, the general energy of the card themselves. So Jay-Z pretty much feels like, he's just not getting back what he put in, and he's feeling like it's taking too long for this relationship to really, come to a point where they're both really happy and content within it. Okay, so let's look at the conscious patterns here. So the King of Swords on Beyonce's side, the King of Swords, so her conscious pattern is basically, she's setting out her boundaries. She's saying what she will and won't accept, because that's the King's energy. It's a very protective energy, but it's a leadership type of energy, and it's about speaking your truth and being vocal, because it's swords, right? And so consciously, it seems like Beyonce has set her boundary. She set what she will accept, what she won't accept, and she's being very vocal about it. Now on Jay-Z's side, he has the Knight of Swords, which is interesting if you think about it, because they're both a very similar energy, but they're a lot different, right? So the King of Swords just kind of sits there, and he allows people to come to him, and he delegates the energy, and he's kind of the boss in the relationship, which is on Beyonce's side. Now, Jay-Z's side has the Knight of Swords, and the Knight is in pursuit of something, wants to accomplish or manifest something, right? It's an action card. There's a whole lot of energy behind it, the energy of pursuit. Now, it looks like to me that with the Knight of Swords, he really is trying to communicate with her, and he's trying to figure out how to communicate with her, and it's kind of like, he seems to be the one that's spitting a lot of the information at her, and she's just kind of sitting there like, okay, well, this is how it is, take it or leave it, right? And so it seems like there's a lot of on Jay-Z's side, it seems like there's a lot of appeal for trying to compromise in this situation, but it doesn't look like there's going to be much compromising, right? Or negotiations. I kind of see the Knight of Swords as kind of like a negotiation card, entering into negotiations, trying to get someone to compromise or meet you in the middle. Whereas Beyonce is like, nope, this is it, take it or leave it, that's all I'm giving. Now, on the bottom, we have the subconscious card. So on Beyonce's side, we have the Page of Cups. Now, the Page is someone who is a learner, is someone who's new to something. It has that kind of naivete, it has that kind of childlike energy to it. And with cups, it's about, emotions and connections and things like that. So on the root of all of it, I think that what this represents is that Beyonce is really good at vocalizing her needs and things like that, but she's not very good at showing emotion or showing an emotional connection, or maybe displaying affection. Okay, so I get the sense that she's a lot more air-based than she is cup-based, meaning that She really bonds with people through communications, having like long, lengthy discussions and bonding like on a very mental level. Like to bond with Beyonce, it seems like you have to really have a really sharp mind, right? But when it comes to like gestures of love or showing emotions, it seems like Beyonce is a little stunted there. It seems like that she has good intentions for that. She wants to connect. However, she's just really not quite sure how to do that. She's still learning. Now, on the bottom for the subconscious thought with Jay-Z, we actually have a really positive card here. We have the Four of Wands. And the Four of Wands suggests, wanting to start a family, wanting to settle down, wanting to celebrate, wanting to be in a relationship. And so it's interesting how Beyonce doesn't really show emotion very well, but she can clearly, communicate her needs, whereas Jay-Z is really more focused on the connection and the bonding part, especially with the, Four of Wands. That's a little bit of a different take on the Four of Wands, but you have to kind of think of like, why would someone want to be in a Four of Wands situation? Because they want to feel safe. They want to feel like they have a family. They want to feel like they have a team on their side. They want to feel supported. Whereas the Knight of Swords on the top, the conscious level for Jay-Z, it really shows that he has a lot of trouble communicating, and sometimes when he's communicating, it can kind of come across maybe as he's being argumentative or as he's like perhaps being defensive about something, which can perhaps set Beyonce off. So it seems like they have communication issues. And it seems like at the root of it, they really do want to be together and they do want to create something together, but they're really having a tough time balancing, communicating and balancing that energy. Okay. So now I want to go ahead and take a look at the elemental similarities and the differences, and then we're going to get into the numbers, okay? So as a whole, it looks like on Beyonce's side, we have cups, which is water, we have swords, which is air, and we have wands, which is fire. We don't have any pentacles there, okay? So that's something to notice. On Jay-Z's side, we actually have, looks like we have all of the elements. We have swords, which is air, we have cups, which is water, we have pentacles, which is earth, and then we have wands, which is fire. So Jay-Z seems to be like elementally, he seems to be a lot more balanced. I wouldn't say that they're completely unbalanced, but I would definitely say Jay-Z is thinking more perhaps like on the long term, like what they can create together and have, especially financially, and their assets and their empire, because that's what I think about when I think of pentacles, is like assets, empire, wealth, money, resources, things you have available to you. And then on Beyonce's side, she's not really worried about the assets. She's really not worried about the material things so much as Jay-Z seems to be. Beyonce seems to be more concerned with the passion, the emotional connection, and communicating with Jay-Z. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the numerology for this spread. So on Beyonce's side, we have the number 4, which represents being concerned with stabilizing and providing the groundwork in which a relationship can grow. So the 4s are all about foundation, setting up a healthy foundation. There's also the number 8 with the 8 of Wands. So this shows building something together that is long-lasting and can withstand the test of time. A power couple who will succeed both professionally and personally. Very committed. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's go ahead and look at Jay-Z's side. So we have the 7 of Cups, which represents being in it to win it, relates to the long journey ahead and speaks of long-term commitment. Okay, so Jay-Z is really, in a numerological sense, he's really concerned about the right here, right now, the journey, the work that it's going to take to get there. Whereas Beyonce's side seems to be more concerned with building a stable foundation and then thinking about like what you're going to build in the future. It's very future oriented. And whereas Jay-Z's is more right now oriented. So far, that could change. We haven't gone through all the numbers yet. So the next one is the 6 of Swords. So 6 represents placing priority on one another's happiness and being willing to make the other person happy at the expense of their own happiness. A true heart-to-heart connection. So that kind of relates into this whole like wanting to compromise, trying to enter negotiations and feeling like no matter what he does, it's not good enough, right? Like no matter what he offers to her, she makes it out to be like, for better or for worse, you know, that it's not good enough. We also have the Seven of Pentacles, okay? So we've already kind of talked about the Seven with the Seven of Cups. Again, it kind of talks about, you know, the long-term commitment relates to the long journey ahead, thinking about, you know, the right now of what we need to accomplish right now to move forward. And then, interestingly enough, you know, she has the Four of Cups, he has the Four of Wands. So the Four kind of represents itself both ways on both sides, which again is, you know, stabilizing the relationship, providing a groundwork in which a relationship can grow. So from that, I get that Beyonce is kind of focused at like more in the future, like retirement and building a life together and, you know, being able to retire together and that sort of thing. Whereas Jay-Z seems to be more concerned about the here and right now, like getting through the right now moment. He seems to be more of a person who lives right in the right now, whereas Beyonce seems to be someone who kind of lives more so in the future. She's like 7 steps ahead of where she's at currently, right? So a lot of really good information there. Lots of really great information. Okay, so we have read both sides. We've gotten a lot of good information from this. So now let's go ahead and read the center spread. And let's see what's going to happen between them. Now, if you want, you can actually go online and you can read about, there's I think that's TMZ, I'm not really sure who put this article out, but if you go to Google and you type in timeline of Beyonce and Jay-Z's relationship, you can kind of see what's been going on with them in more recent years. This whole cheating scandal, I think this was probably like 4 to 5 years ago, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe a little bit more, but it was quite some time ago, right? So, in the center is the Knight of Wands, the Star, and Strength. So, first of all, let's go ahead and go back through this whole entire process. Let's look for an abundance of majors and abundance of minors. So there are no minors. So where their relationship is headed is definitely through a spiritual union. You can see this with the 2 major arcana in the present and the future, okay? So there are some big karmic lessons, big spiritual lessons that are going on right now. The star in the present suggests that there is going to be a healing and a recovery between them. And then the strength represents compassion instead of anger. So it's more like, you know, learning to show each other love and trying to kind of repress angry feelings, or trying to place the, you know, prioritizing feeling compassion and love for someone versus any type of resentment or defiance or defensiveness that they could possibly throw at you. So, I mean, so far it looks like they're really committed to changing their behaviors, which is really, really nice. And then with the Knight of Wands in the back, you know, again, the Knight is a pursuit. He is in pursuit to manifest something. So it looks like they're both working together. And the Knight of Wands, in this particular situation, intuitively, I'm kind of getting that they're both working to bring the passion into their relationship, because I associate Wands with fire, which is like passion. So yeah, really, really great cards. So let's look at the elements. So we actually only have one element really present here, unless you want to deconstruct it astrologically, which you are more than welcome to do. But since this is more of an introductory video, I'm trying to keep this kind of basic. So we have Wands, which shows a very passionate and sexual connection to the other person, okay? So again, like I said, they're trying to bring the passion into their relationship. There are no numbers to read. However, you could potentially read the Star and the Strength card if you wanted to reduce them down, okay? So we could do that with the Strength card. That's obvious. That's number 8. And actually, they're both number 8, because the Star is, I believe the Star is 17. Let me double check that real quick. I should know this. But I always get the Star mixed up in Tarot and Lenormand because they're one number off, so I'm like, ugh. 17. So they actually both reduce, and I, by the way, I did not like intentionally pull these cards in any which way. I actually used a random card generator for all of this, and I just copied, the images over and placed them on here and organized them so they made a little bit of sense. But yeah, 17, and 17 reduces to 8 because you want to do 1 plus 7 equals 8. So again, 8 for the numerology is building something together that's long lasting and can withstand the test of time. A power couple who will succeed both professionally and personally, very committed. So that really, that really kind of drives that thought home, especially when you have these two cards kind of next to each other. So let's go back to the actual question. The actual question was there any infidelity? And, from this spread, I would be uncomfortable with saying that there was, because I don't really get the sense that there actually was. Whether or not that's true or not, that's irrelevant. But if there was any infidelity, it was definitely not an emotional connection with that person. He seems like he is committed to Beyonce. He really wants to try with her, but at that point in time, he just kind of felt like she was basically saying no. She was sending him away, and perhaps, maybe that's where that whole happened. We don't really know because they haven't really said, word for word what exactly happened. At least I'm not aware. But that is a possibility. And, for the other question is reconciliation possible? Are these two going to reunite and become stronger? Is this relationship going to heal? And I think the answer is an overwhelming, resounding yes, especially with the Star card in the present, the Strength card in the future position. Those are fabulous, fantastic cards to get as a yes, as an affirmative to answer that question. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of my process and in examining and relationships between two different people and kind of seeing where the relationship is headed. If you have any questions, let me know, but I thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next training.